So I packed all my things and I sent them to Florida, and I was going to leave the next day. And that night I had my first real major spiritual experience. And it had to be Babaji, because what happened is just a miracle. I was sitting on the floor talking to a friend about going back. And suddenly we both heard the following. We heard a voice in the air, and he heard it too. So I knew I wasn't making it up. And the voice out loud said, "Never go back. Go to California now." And I was so stunned. I had never had an experience like that. And he said, "Sondra, I think you better go to California."
So, welcome, Sondra Ray, to this podcast at the Who Am I Quest. It's such a privilege for me to have you here. We have a long, wonderful history together.
Right.
And Sondra is someone that has been working in the field of the breath and also as a spiritual teacher for at least 40 years, if not more. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But Sondra hasn't stopped working. I mean, she's been continuous. I think you work 7 days a week is my impression, Sondra. And it's just your life, your passion is to help people to continually transform other people's lives. And it's been such an inspiration.
Thank you.
So today, the subject of the talk is your meetings with Babaji, which I know was this extraordinary turning point in your life. And it would be really wonderful for the viewers to hear a little bit about the kind of before and after moment, because I know it was almost like a before after instant, and also the how you actually came to find Babaji, because I know there's a wonderful story behind that.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be with you and to talk about Babaji. And I'm so grateful to have this spiritual master in my life. And he totally shaped my future. I was a nurse. I had a master's degree in public health nursing. And I was actually in the Air Force during the Vietnamese War. I stayed at a military base in Arizona. And then my ex-husband wrote me and said, "I want you to come back." I had been divorced for 2 years. And I thought, yeah, okay, that's it. I should try it again. So I packed all my things and I sent them to Florida, and I was going to leave the next day. And that night I had my first real major spiritual experience. And it had to be Babaji, because what happened is just a miracle. I was sitting on the floor talking to a friend about going back. And suddenly we both heard the following. We heard a voice in the air, and he heard it too. So I knew I wasn't making it up. And the voice out loud said, "Never go back. Go to California now." And I was so stunned. I had never had an experience like that. And he said, "Sondra, I think you better go to California." And I said, "If I
This
don't
was out loud,
out
you
loud
heard
in the air." Right.
Wow.
Uh-huh. And I said, "If I don't follow this voice, I'll regret it my whole life." However, the California Nurses Association had just written to me and said, "Don't bother to come to California looking for a job. The waiting list for nurses is 2 years," because everybody wanted to go to California at that time, right? And so I had no hope of a job. I didn't really have any money because I just had spent it all on a trip to Europe. So there I was, go to California now. And the next day, I did it. I got in the car and I started driving. And I got to the border and it said LA this way and San Francisco that way. And I just had to choose. So I said, okay, I'll go to San Francisco. And all these miracles started happening to me, Lucy. I just can't even tell you. I mean, I didn't even have an apartment or anything or furniture. And my car died. And it said, "Furnished apartment for rent." And okay, I said to the manager, "I need to live here." He said, "Ma'am, you need the first month's rent, the last month's rent, the deposit." It was a huge price for me, California prices. I said, "I don't have it, but I need to live here." And he kept saying, "Ma'am, I told you, you need the first month's rent, last month's rent, the deposit." And I said, I couldn't move. I couldn't move my body. And finally he said, "I don't know what it is about you, lady, but I'll let you move in. I've never done this in 25 years. And I got to move in with no deposit, nothing, no guarantee of a job. And I said, I'll get a job tomorrow. And I couldn't believe that came out of me. And then next day, some friends made a call for me and I got a job. It was all just magic. And I didn't even know who was talking to me, but of course it was Babaji. I must have known him many lifetimes before. So anyway, I went to get a job then. I had a job as a nurse, and it was perfect preparation for my career as a breath worker, a rebirther, studying birth, because I was in a prenatal clinic. Okay. So everything just turned to magic. And then I started having these car accidents, and I was crying one night. And, this is how my career unfolded. I was crying, and these guys said, "What's your problem?" I said, "I'm having these car accidents and I need to cross the bridge." And they said, "Don't worry, we'll take you to this new guru." So on Sunday morning, they drove me out to the woods, and there was this man standing outside with about 15 people sitting at his feet, and he had a flip chart. Well, I thought that's very unusual for outside. And he was talking about the 5 biggies, which are the 5 negative consciousness factors that keep you from being in bliss. And so I thought, he must be my teacher. Well, then I forgot about it. And 2 weeks later, I was in an astrology class, and some guy behind me said, "Who wants to try this new experiment?" And my hand went up like this. And I thought, what? I didn't even know what I volunteered for. He said, "Okay, you have to drop out and come with me." And I had a new job. I didn't have any vacation coming, but I knew I was supposed to be there. I didn't even know what the experiment was. This was all magic happening because of Babaji, right? And so I went to the head of the hospital and I said, "I know this is very unusual, but I need 5 days off from my spiritual life." And he said, "Okay." I don't even know if he knew. He said, "Okay." So that's how it all started, And then, of course, I was one of the first breath workers, or we call it rebirthing then, because we were studying how your birth affects your life. So I was one of the first he ever tried it on, and it was like magic for me. And I said, "This is magic. How do I become a breath worker?" He said, "Handle your birth trauma and move in with me." Okay. I said, "This guy is crazy." Well, I did it. And we got this hot tub in the basement, and we started doing wet rebirthing on each other with a snorkel rolled up in the fetal position. Okay, so we were doing that for a while, and I was working, and I was still a nurse, but I'm learning to be a breath worker, right? Okay, well, then one day we got this letter from India. It said Leonard Orr, 301 Lion Street, San Francisco. And I opened it up, and it was the strangest letter. First of all, there was no return address, and it was stamped India, no town. And the paper was very unusual, and printed in pencil was "Come to India." Again, it had to be Babaji calling us, right? But no signature. So I said, "Leonard, we've been called," So I didn't have any money because I just gave up my nursing career, and I was quitting being a nurse, trying to become a breath worker. I didn't have any money, but I borrowed the money. It's the only time in my life I'd ever borrowed the money. It's the best thing I ever did. So we went to India searching for gurus, and I think about 8 of us went, new breath workers.
So Sondra, hang on. When you say that the letter said "come to India," you knew that was from a guru?
I didn't know who it was from,
No.
but I knew it was from something mystical. I mean, how could you explain it? There was no signature, nothing. And I said, "Leonard, we've been called, we have to go, So we went, and then we just, all of us split up, and we went around looking for different gurus. We didn't meet Babaji on that one, but one girl, she went north, and she didn't come back, and she was missing. And, you can't find a missing person in India, So she didn't come back for 7 months. And then she came back and she said, "I found the real Babaji." So I said, "Leonard, we have to go back." I was very daring. I don't know where I got this energy to be so daring. And we went back. And then there was a guru we had met, and he took a liking to me, and he wanted in Bombay, and he wanted me to be he wanted me to be a disciple of him. And I didn't know if I should, which to do. He was very tempting, very powerful guy. And he said, "You stay with me, Sondra Ray." And Leonard said, "You come with me to the north, And I was really confused. And then Leonard said, okay, I'm taking off. You can come and get your head together and meet me in 3 days, he said. And I was so afraid I'd make the wrong decision. And I was so confused for 3 days. So the end of 3 days, I went outside and I started screaming. I said, God, I demand to know my true spiritual path, and I demand to know tonight. And I'm screaming at the sky. And that night I heard the music of Haidakhan, the arti, which you know what that is. I heard it, and it was an ancient memory for me from a past life. The next day I jumped on the bus and I went to Haldwani, which was a village. I thought it was a village. It turned out to be a bustling town. And I didn't have an address. All I knew is I was supposed to find this guy named Muniraj, who was some kind of a saint. So I'm walking around. I thought, oh my God, this is a bustling town, a city. How am I going to find him? I'm all by myself. And I kept saying, do you know Muniraj? Do you know Muniraj? For 4 hours. I never gave up. The fourth hour, somebody said, oh, well, I think he has a different name here. His name is Trilak Singh. He's down here in this feed store. And I thought, what's a saint doing in a feed store? So I went down there, I knocked on the door, and it was Muniraj. And he came out and he was wearing white silk. I'll never forget. He looked like an angel. I had ever met anyone so holy in my life. And he said, okay, you may go. So that was the beginning of the whole thing. And so then I had to hike through the riverbed. And in those days, the river was very high. You had to put your passport and stuff in plastic around your neck. And it was pretty adventurous. But fortunately, I had been in the Peace Corps, so I wasn't scared really. And I got there. And then I thought, okay, I ran up the 108 steps looking for my guru. And I was thinking, he's going to be wearing purple velvet with a turban and, looking like a guru. I couldn't see anybody like that. And somebody grabbed my skirt and they said, hey, you're supposed to bow to the guru. I said, well, where is he? And they said, you ran right by him. And he was sitting on the steps looking like a farmer. And of course, I grew up with farmers in Iowa. I guess that's why he greeted me like a child, And he had his gunny sack on and he had straw hanging out of his mouth. And he said, oh, Mrs. Sondra. So that was the beginning, okay? I mean, and after that, my whole life completely changed, So I was really shocked about his energy because, he is a Mahavatar, which means he was not born of a woman. He materialized that body in the cave there. So if you can imagine walking around with somebody like that, it's a shock to your system, But anyway, the first time he came out that night going to the temple, he was wearing exactly my fantasy, what I imagined. So I like fashion, So he was wearing purple robes and turban. He looked exactly like that night how I wanted him to look. And he looked at me, I would say, quite a ways across, more than 50 feet. And I hit the ground. He just looked at me and it was so much, I just fell over. That's how strong it was. So that was the beginning. Yeah. What
Amazing. What was like propelling you to go to India to follow all these clues? Was it just like an impulse you couldn't stop, or were you consciously thinking, I really want to find a teacher in my life? Or was it more you were just following your gut?
I was totally following my gut. I had no plan to meet, and I never said, oh, I want to go to India. I never said I want to meet a guru. I mean, he just grabbed me. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
And everything unfolded for me. I didn't have to plan anything. I mean, I got the money and all the cases where I needed money that I didn't have. It just came to me. All the right people came to me, and it was amazing. And so the first night there, I was sitting by this fire with these old yogis, and they looked to be like 100 years old, and they're all chanting and all this. And one of them sat next to me, and he said, "You sit here." And he was singing and singing, and I thought, what's he singing about? It was very kind of romantic, and I thought, what is going on here? And they said, all he ever talks about is God. So everything became extremely spiritual. So that night, I was so blown away. I said, I have to go lie down. I can't handle this energy. So I went to my room and I had my sleeping bag, right? And suddenly I had a vision, and I'm not a visual person. I'm auditory. You know, I hear stuff as a writer, but I don't usually see things. I had this vision of this person, a baby's body with an old man's head, which I recognized, which was old Haidakhan Baba, which is another materialization of Babaji from earlier times. So it was a baby's body and old man's head, which was Babaji's head from another body, floating in there all night in front of me. So I'm totally freaked out. I couldn't handle it. So I said to my roommate, could you go in my backpack and get out my Course in Miracles? I had bought all 3 books in those days. And I said, read to me. Fortunately, I had that. And he read to me the words of Jesus all night to calm me down. So then I didn't sleep at all the first night in Haidakhan, which is Babaji's ashram. And it was kind of rough then, too. You know, there was no electricity, no running water, no toilets. And it was pretty primitive in those days in 1977. So anyway, I didn't sleep at all. So the next day we're gathering around Babaji and he said, you, meaning me, give a speech. You're a teacher. And I wasn't a teacher at the time. I was a nurse. But, you know, he saw my future, I guess. And he started preparing me. And he would call on me spontaneously to give a speech. And I thought, oh, my God, what do I speak about? So anyway, I shared what I saw in my room that night. You know, I just shared. And I thought, what if I'm not saying the right thing? And I looked over at him and he's sitting on a rock coloring in a coloring book. And I thought, well, he's on another planet. You know, I mean, it was all just overwhelmingly stunning and brilliant and mind-blowing. And, you know, you can imagine after spending 2 weeks with him like that, it took me a long time to recover. Yeah. But it was all, and my whole life just unfolded after that. And I started, when I came home, I started really working as a breath worker and being, in those days, we only had wet rebirthing in a hot tub. And I was one of the first ones in the world. So I was a real pioneer. And I started supporting Leonard Orr with the project. And then my whole career just took off, you know, and people were fascinated with this kind of work. And then I started studying how your birth affects your relationships. And then I wrote the Loving Relationships training. So my whole career, I would say, started with Babaji, you know, and I am so grateful because I love doing this mission and I'm good at it and it's the right thing for me. And I had been a nurse 14 years and I was done with the medical profession and I wanted to learn spiritual healing. So that's what I started studying, was spiritual healing with breath work.
Yes, well, I first met you in the late 80s with when you had written the Loving Relationships training, which was totally inspirational, you know, totally came from God. I mean, I really felt that, and it still affects my life today, actually.
Yeah, thank you.
So in a way, it's like Babaji purified you, and it sounds almost like he plugged you into something. It's like an electric plug, right? Here's your life can start now. Or, I mean, I don't know how you describe that.
I would say that, and of course, it was pretty intense because after I came home, I vomited a lot, and I went through a lot of stuff, which was karma coming out of me, you know, birth trauma coming out of me. So I had to be really strong, and I wasn't afraid, but it was pretty intense for after meeting him, you know, because you don't just walk around with someone who's a Mahavatar and not be affected in your body. And so my whole body was, I couldn't even wear watches. Even if I wore a Rolex, the inside would fly out. That's how intense his energy was in my body. I couldn't wear watches for a year and a half because I was processing his energy, you know. So that was really amazing. And so he was here for 14 years. So I went again to see him. The second time I went, he was on a tour. And I was in Bali, actually. I wasn't planning to go. But I had a dream that he was appeared to me and he's, you come. He was wearing bright red. And then there was a telegram at my door the next morning. Now you tell me how that could happen. And it said, don't bother coming to Haidakhan, meet me in Bombay. Love, Babaji. That was a telegram. in my door. I told nobody where I was in Bali. And I thought, oh my God, I don't have the right clothes. I don't have a visa. Anyway, I did it. I went to Thailand and got the visa and did everything. And I met him in Bombay. And that was when the movie Gandhi first came out. So I saw it when it first came out in Bombay. Okay, so then in Bombay, we had to travel all across the city, which took a long time every day to go to this big tent. And he was in there giving darshan or blessings to people. And there was very few Westerners. It was mostly Indian people and me. And one day he came out on the stage and he was wearing this white silk with this fuchsia colored velvet handkerchief hanging here. And I went, oh, he looks so beautiful. And he took off this handkerchief, or you call it velvet, the cloth, and he flew it, and it sailed across hundreds of people and landed in my lap. Because he knew I liked fashion. Well, then he called me up front. I thought, oh, now what's going to happen? And I'm bowing to him, and he put all this light around me, and he kept saying my name like a mantra. And I thought, something's going to happen. I didn't know what was going. I knew something was going to happen. Well, he said, "You go to Wapi." I didn't even know where Wapi was, which was a little farm outside of quite a ways from Bombay, and it was kind of an ashram. So I went there, and in Bombay, I had been staying with these wealthy devotees. Now I'm at this farm, and he said, "You sleep on the kitchen floor." And I went, "What?" Okay, there's little hamsters running around. It's this mud floor. It's very primitive. So I'm sleeping on the floor, and oh my God, I got the one and only migraine headache I've had in my whole life. I have to leave India. I can't take it. And he called us in the living room, and he's sitting in the swing, and he's swinging. And I said to him telepathically, "You have to help me, or I have to leave India. I can't handle it anymore. I can't handle your energy anymore," I said to him telepathically. So then out comes this servant with these silver glasses, and he said, "Oh, some of you need this." And he handed me this thing to drink. I didn't know what it was, so I drank it. And anyway, that was, I don't know, some kind of a psychedelic plant or something. I don't know what it was. I drank this, and then I realized I didn't have any cash with me. I forgot to try to change my traveler's checks. I mean, in those days we had traveler's checks. And I had like 2 rupees. So I'm walking to the bank, and somebody had stolen my shoes, and I felt really poor, like a poor Indian. I thought, oh my God, I have no shoes, I have no money. Then I would switch. No, you're a rich American. Then I would switch and feel poor, and then I would feel rich. And I was going back and forth. I didn't know what was going on with me. Anyway, the bank said, "No, we don't change these traveler's checks." So I got in a rickshaw and those little carts, And I said to the driver, "Take me to a bank where I can change this." And he drove me out in the country outside of Bombay. I couldn't believe it. And there was a bank out there, and it wasn't open. So I sat down, and all this energy started coming through me. I didn't know what was going on. I'm hyperventilating. And this guy said to me, "Why don't you go sit in the bank?" And I go in there, and there's nobody in there. Now, why was it open? And why was, these kind of things happen with Babaji. And I go in there, and I'm breathing and breathing, and suddenly I have a whole memory of a past life where I was killed in a bank. And my mother used to say to me, "Sondra, I don't understand you. You had no fear as a child, but you won't go in banks with me. You are terrified of banks." And I said, "I don't know why." But this was it. I had some past life in a bank. He even cleared me of that, in a very unusual way. So those kind of things happened in my second trip, And you want me to keep going?
Well, I mean, I could hear it endlessly. Let's have a couple of questions, and then we can always come back to that, Sondra.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious. So you take people to India, and what's your main reason for taking people to India? Like, what is it that you hope that people will receive when they go to this ashram? I mean, is it self-discovery?
Well, as a matter of fact, we're leaving in a few days to go to India.
So right. That's very topical.
And we are taking about 27 people this time. And I'm so happy that we can do that. Well, a lot of people need to know Babaji and have a master in their life, and they want that, but they're afraid. They're afraid to go to India by themselves, and rightly so, because if you go by yourself, it's really hard and people don't know how to deal with it and they might get sick, you know. So people like to go with us, Marcus and me, because we make it very easy and we know how to get them through without any sickness. We know what hotels, we know where to go, we know how to help people, and we do breath work every day at the ashram. And other people coming to the ashram don't do that. So they have a much harder time. So our goal is to make it easy for people. And I want them to have the joy that I've had and the miracles that I've had with Babaji, obviously. And they can save themselves decades of time by coming with us. I mean, Babaji himself said, if you make it to Navaratri, which is where we're going, which is the Divine Mother Festival, I mean, it's like one day is equal to about 13 years of spiritual progress. So our goal is to save people time, you know, in their path.
Yeah.
And if they have Babaji in their life, they can move much faster. Obviously, if they come to Navaratri, they get a lot of spiritual growth very fast. And so we want to give people that experience that they can have a master in their life, which saves them decades and decades and decades of lifetimes, and they can have the joy. I mean, Babaji is the bestower of the highest joy. We chant this thing called the Arti in Haidakhan every day and every morning and every evening. And one of the lines is Babaji, bestower of the highest joy. So naturally, we want other people to experience that, and we want to help people clear their karma fast, you know. And as you know, you've done it yourself. People can shave their heads there, which releases their karma very fast. It's called Moondan. And, you know, we're excited to be going. I'm very excited that I'm talking to you now because we're going in a few days and I feel really
Wonderful.
happy about it. Yeah. So we want to provide people with an opportunity to have spiritual enlightenment quicker than they would ordinarily, you know.
Yeah. So, yeah, speed things up.
Yeah, speed
I mean,
everything up.
everyone gets to enlightenment eventually. It's just, is it going to be 100 lifetimes or two lifetimes or
How many lifetimes do you want, you know? So it speeds up the process.
I mean, I've been to Heracon now 4 times. I never had the privilege of physically meeting Babaji, but it is this mysterious shedding, I think is how I would describe it, that you do come away feeling lighter and clearer, and yeah, it's extraordinarily powerful and mysterious, very mysterious,
very
actually.
mysterious. Right.
But you know something has massively transformed.
Right. And it doesn't matter if you haven't met him in a body because his presence is everywhere, you know. And when you go there, it's like being in his home. That's what I like about it. I mean, of course, we have an altar behind us here to the Divine Mother. He's the one that exposed me to the Divine Mother, by the way. I didn't know about that, but because I was raised in a very patriarchal church, Lutheran church. We didn't even have the Virgin Mary, you know, so I didn't know what the Divine Mother was. And when Babaji took samadhi, which means conscious departure, the last thing he apparently said is, I leave everything in the hands of the Divine Mother. Now, I didn't know he was going to leave consciously, and I didn't know what the Divine Mother was either. So I didn't know why he said that. So I said, please show me what that is. Well, that night, I didn't know he was going to leave. I got an instruction during one of my breathing sessions that I should start teaching people the mantra, Om Namah Shivaya. So I was doing a loving relationships training, and I told people Monday night we're going to go to this mansion, and we're all going to, and I'm going to, and all 80 people came. So I walked into this mansion in LA. I couldn't believe it. It was like a temple, white carpets, white furniture, everything was like beautiful. And I did. I taught people how to chant Om Namah Shivaya. And so when people left, they went outside and they started shouting, Sondra, come out here immediately. I thought, oh, what's going on? So I go out, and above this mansion was a huge blue cross. Now, there was no explanation for this cross. All 80 people saw this. I had no idea what that meant. Well, the next day I found out at that exact moment is when Babaji took conscious departure, So it was like a blessing for us. And he was showing us that. And then he began appearing to me in many different forms. And I'm not even a visual person, as I say, but for the next week, every night he would appear to me in different forms. So he's not gone. He's present, and anybody can access him. And it'd be good if they read some of the books. We wrote a book on Babaji. And I think that anybody who connects with him right now, especially during these horrible times that we're having, this crisis and war and everything, I think people need a master. I think it's really important. And so we relate to what we call the dream team, which is Babaji and then Jesus of the Course in Miracles and the Divine Mother. Okay. And so anyway, after that experience, when I saw the Blue Cross, I started having a lot of visions of the Divine Mother and a lot of miracles of the Divine Mother. And one was I commissioned this painting, which is behind me here, of the Divine Mother. And I paid a lot for it at that time. I got Babaji's temple painter, and I said, I need a painting of the Divine Mother for my loft, which is high ceilings. So I need a large painting. She said, well, that'll be $1,008, which was a lot for me at the time, So she went in this little cottage on the lake, and she stayed in there for so long. I got really nervous about this painting, and I sent out an art critic. I said, I think it's going to be too much for my apartment. Go look at it and tell me what you think. And he said, Sondra, it's very hypnotic. I thought, wow, it's going to be too much. I'm going to send it to the ashram in Colorado. We have a Babaji ashram in Colorado. I said to my decorator, when it's done, go pick it up and send it to this ashram. Well, then I went on tour, and he had a dream that he should hang it in my apartment anyway. So I came home, I turned on the light, and there was this painting. And I went, oh! And I was so stunned by the beauty of it. I threw myself on the floor. I said, pardon me for my resistance. And then a smell of roses came out for 5 minutes. And there was no flowers, obviously, in my apartment. So then I started having these miracles of the Divine Mother. And I guess that was my destiny to really eventually do a Divine Mother movement, which I still want to do. And now I've written this book with Marcus called The Only Answer, which is about the miracles of the Divine Mother and how you can have that. And it's really important now because the patriarchy, is so intense and everybody's so frightened about what's going on. We all need the help of the Divine Mother. So I'm really happy. And Babaji I think he's the one that encouraged me also to be a writer, I would say. So everything I'm doing now is unfolding because of him, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I'm totally believe that, Sondra.
Yeah.
I mean, there will be people listening to this that think, oh, this is all too far out, and sort of almost looking at it like a kind of entertaining story. But the reality is that anyone can have this opportunity of entering these extraordinary, I was going to say realms. That's not really the right word, but profound levels of your being, you could say, through having spiritual teacher, spiritual master can open up these places that are within us all the time. They're just not awakened, really. And you don't have to physically go to India. You could also, you're doing different things all around the world, aren't you? And you're a channel.
Right. And we're going to have a European tour coming up, and we are going to go to Glastonbury in July. At the same time, we have the 250th anniversary of the United States. We're going to be in Glastonbury, and we're going to teach a course. I call it Ascension Now, which is going to be about physical immortality, how to give up all the death programming so you can be healthy and happy. And we're going to do a whole intensive there, Marcus and me, in July. And so people can come to that if they can't make it to India. All the Europeans probably make it to Glastonbury in July. So we try to provide, for people that can't make it to India, we have other events, and we also have Bali Quest, where people actually can experience how to give a breath session to another person. We give them a very intensive 10-day training in Bali in December. So that's available too. It's all on our website. And, I think people have an opportunity to find us one way or another. And we're always giving private sessions online, and that's what we're really good at, is giving private breathwork sessions. And we can
I
help.
think you should come with a warning label, though. your, your life will not be the same afterwards.
Oh, yeah. We'll only improve. That's our goal. I mean, my goal is I want to help people ascend to a higher frequency, and I want them to get the highest possibility for themselves. That's my goal, and Marcus's goal. And, we also offer a relationships counseling because we have a very good relationship. And by the way, I have this wonderful marriage because of Babaji. I should add that. He even gave me that. Not only did he give me a wonderful career, which I love, he gave me a wonderful husband who I love. And I was single for a long time. I had been divorced eons ago, but I was single for a long time and I was fine. But I was studying the Course in Miracles, and they're talking about, Jesus is talking about how to have a holy relationship. And I thought, no, I really want that in this lifetime. I want to experience a holy relationship. Okay. But I was so independent and so used to being single that I just couldn't seem to manifest it. So I said to Babaji, look, you have to find my partner for me. I don't know. I'm too blocked or whatever, and I'm too independent, and I need someone that fits the mission. And so anyway, finally, I go to Philadelphia, which is a city I didn't even like too much. But I went there, and there was Marcus, and I had known him years before when he was married to someone else. And I thought, oh, I remember you. I hadn't seen him for 20 years. And I said, I remember you. Are you still married? No. Are you still an artist? Yes. And I told him, I need this new Ho'oponopono book, and can you help me find it? And I think everything just, unfolded. And there happened to be two Babaji devotees in the Philadelphia Rebirthing Center at the time by a fluke. They had missed their flights or something. Okay. And they came in my room and they said, don't you get it? He's the one for you. And if they hadn't been there, I might have missed it, because I just wasn't expecting to find somebody then and there. And they kept saying, don't you get it? He's the one. And it was like, Babaji put them there to make sure I didn't miss this opportunity. And thank God, because now we have a wonderful marriage and we work together and we do sessions together. So even that Babaji gave me,
Yeah.
So
And he is a wonderful man.
Yeah, he is. And the Guru wants to give you everything, of course. And it's like, and the Divine Mother wants you to have everything. And if you're not receiving what you're asking for, it's because you're blocked, It's not that the Guru or the Divine Mother or Jesus doesn't want to give it to you. The masters want to give you everything for your happiness. But if you're not receiving it, then you're blocked, So anyway,
not ready. Yeah.
I'd like to say that I've received everything that I have today from my Guru Babaji, and his love is available. He said, my love is available. You can take it or not, he says. And his main teaching is for happiness is truth, love, and simplicity and service to mankind. That's the formula he gave us, something very simple: truth, love, simplicity, and service to mankind. And then he gave us the mantra, Om Namah Shivaya, to clear ourselves, and the breathing. So he called it birthing the new Kriya Yoga.
And I do see you living those three things: truth, simplicity, and love. I mean, you and Marcus, you are these sort of traveling gurus, really, aren't you? You go around, you don't travel first class or anything. You live a pretty simple life. You always speak the truth, and there's so much love that you offer people. So I think you are living those three tenets.
Thank you. And we ended up in Washington, D.C. because of Babaji too, because I would have never come here to live by choice. I was living in Nashville with Marcus, and we had a very wonderful life there. And then we went to Bali to do our breathwork training as usual. And at the end of it, we're lying down, relaxing, listening to this Buddha bar music. And all of a sudden I heard in my head, again, an instruction: move to Washington, D.C. I thought, I can't believe it. I would have never thought of such a thing. So I turned to Marcus and I said, you won't believe what I just heard. And he said, I just heard the same thing. So he heard the same thing at the same time. So again, Babaji guided us, and we've moved here, and we've made kind of a temple of our place, and we're trying to give as much energy to this situation as we can, and we do our spiritual practices every day, and every night we sit at this altar. And so again, Babaji sent us here. So we're pretty surrendered, and it works. If you can just surrender to the master, you'll be guided for your highest mission, whatever it is.
Well,
Okay.
thank you so much, Sondra, for coming on this podcast.
Yeah.
It's been wonderful, and I hope everyone will enjoy this. And I will put the links for your website so if people want to join you on any of your amazing trips.
Yes,
And
check
you
out our
do,
new book, The Only Answer, it's called.
okay, and that
All
too.
right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lucy. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sondra. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the content, please click subscribe, leave a comment. It'd be lovely to hear from you. We do read the comments, and see you next time.